He never raised his voice. He never defended a point. Yet, every debate he entered ended the same way, his opponents standing in silence, unsure of what they truly believed. His name was Socrates. And 2,400 years later, his method still terrifies the confident and humbles the proud. Socrates didn't win debates in the traditional sense. He dismantled them, while others built walls of argument and shouted from behind them. Socrates quietly asked a few simple questions and watched those walls collapse. He never attacked. He never imposed. He simply exposed, revealing that most people don't really know why they believe what they believe. In a world where everyone wants to be right, Socrates chose to be curious. And that choice made him the most dangerous mind in Athens. His weapon wasn't anger or intellect alone, it was the question. The right question, asked at the right moment, could pierce through arrogance, ego, and illusion faster than any argument. Today, we live in an age of opinions, loud voices, fast judgments, endless certainty. But in this noise, the one who can ask instead of argue still holds the real power. Because questions can be attacked. They can be refuted. They turn confrontation into reflection and reflection into truth. In this lesson, you'll discover the 5 Socratic questions that can dismantle any argument, dominate any discussion, and if you dare reveal your own hidden assumptions. This isn't about winning debates. It's about mastering the art of intellectual warfare through humility. Because the person who asks the right questions doesn't just control the conversation, they control the mind behind it. Now, imagine this. Every argument, every heated conversation, every online debate you've ever seen, they all follow the same pattern. One side claims. The other side defends. Both sides shout louder. Neither side listens. And in the end, no one learns. Socrates saw this thousands of years ago. He realized that most conflicts don't come from what we think, but from how we think. We don't test our beliefs. We protect them. We don't examine truth. We defend ego. That's why Socrates built something far more powerful than logic. He built a framework, 5 questions so sharp, so precise, that they could cut through any illusion and reveal the foundation beneath every belief. These aren't tricks. They're tools forged from humility, curiosity, and courage. Because asking the right question isn't an act of weakness, it's an act of intellectual strength. So today, let us walk the same path Socrates did. Let us learn the art of thinking through questioning. These are the 5 Socratic questions, the weapons of truth that dismantle ignorance, expose hypocrisy, and liberate the mind from illusion. But remember, the power of these questions lies not in using them on others, it lies in daring to use them on yourself. Question 1. The foundation destroyer. How do you know that is true? This is the first question, the blade that cuts through illusion. It sounds simple, almost innocent. But it's the question that has brought down kings of logic, philosophers, and politicians alike. Because when you ask how do you know that is true, you're not attacking the person. You're attacking the foundation of their belief. You're asking them to trace their conviction back to its source, and that's where most people fall silent. The truth is, most opinions aren't born from deep thinking. They're inherited from parents, from culture, from media, from the crowd. We repeat ideas not because we've verified them, but because they sound familiar. Socrates knew this. He knew that every belief has a root, and that once you expose the root, you expose its weakness. That's why this question is so devastating. It forces people to confront the uncomfortable truth, that they might not actually know what they claim to know. Example. Them. Social media is destroying society. You. Interesting, how do you know that is true? Them. Well, everyone says so. You. But what evidence convinced you personally? And suddenly, they realize they've been echoing a collective opinion, not a personal understanding. That S when silence enters. And silence is the sound of truth being born. A master of dialogue doesn't fight, he simply makes others see. The foundation destroyer isn't just a question. It's the mirror that reveals what is built on sand. And what is built on stone. Question 2. The assumption excavator. What assumptions are you making? Every argument is a house, and every house stands on hidden pillars. Those pillars are assumptions. The silent beliefs people never question. The invisible truths they think are self-evident. When you ask what assumptions are you making, you're not attacking the argument, you're digging under it. You're the excavator, uncovering the unseen structure that holds the entire thing together. Most people have never looked beneath their own ideas. They speak as if their reasoning floats in the air, but every belief rests on something. Ask the right question, and you'll find out what. Example. Them. Everyone should go to college. You. What assumptions are you making about success and education? Them. Well, I assume college leads to better jobs. And better jobs mean better lives. You. So you assume everyone defines a better life the same way. And right there you've unearthed the root. You've shown that their conclusion depends on ideas they've never examined. Socrates understood that assumptions feel like facts until they are questioned, but the moment you make someone speak them out loud, those facts turn into fragile hypotheses. And once exposed, a shaky foundation begins to tremble. The assumption excavator doesn't destroy with force, it destroys with clarity. Because when light reaches the hidden parts of thought, illusion no longer survives. Question 3. The evidence interrogator. What evidence would change your mind? This is the question that separates thinkers from believers. It sounds calm, even polite, but it's one of the most dangerous questions ever asked. Because when you ask someone what evidence would change your mind, you're not asking for facts. You're testing their honesty. A rational person can answer. A fanatic cannot. This question forces people to face an uncomfortable mirror. Are they actually seeking truth, or just defending their identity? If someone says, nothing would change my mind, you've already won, because they've admitted they're not reasoning. They're worshipping. They've replaced curiosity with certainty, and called it conviction. Example. Them. Cryptocurrency is a scam. You. Interesting. What evidence would convince you that it's not? Them. Nothing. It's obviously fake. You. So no possible evidence could ever change your view. Them. No. You. Then this isn't a discussion, it's a declaration of faith. Socrates used this kind of question to reveal the line between intelligence and ideology. Because if your ideas can be tested, they're not knowledge, they're dogma. The evidence interrogator doesn't argue. It invites reflection. It challenges people to define the limits of their own openness. And when used on yourself, it's even more powerful. Ask, what would convince me that I am wrong? If you can answer that, maybe it's not truth you're defending. It's your pride. Question 4. The perspective shifter. What would someone who disagrees with you say? This is where true wisdom begins. Because intelligence isn't about how well you defend your view. It's about how clearly you understand the views that oppose you. When you ask what would someone who disagrees with you say, you pull your opponent out of their comfort zone and into the realm of empathy. You challenge them not to react, but to reflect. Most people have never tried to describe the world through another mind. They caricature their opponents, building straw men that are easy to burn. But the wise know. The strongest minds can argue against themselves and still stand firm. Socrates used this question to separate thinkers from imitators. He knew that to understand truth, you must see it from both sides, not just the one that flatters your ego. Example. Them. Capitalism is the best system. You. Interesting. What would someone who disagrees with you say? Them. They say it's unfair to poor people. You. Is that really the strongest argument against it? What would a well-educated critic say? An economics professor argue? That's when the silence deepens. Because to answer honestly, they must step outside their own identity. They must become, for a moment, the very person they resist. And in doing so, the conversation shifts from combat to consciousness. The perspective shifter doesn't seek to win. It seeks to expand. Because once you can truly inhabit another's mind, you no longer fear disagreement, you learn from it. Question 5. The consequence calculator. What are the logical implications of your position? This is the final strike, the question that ends illusions. It doesn't challenge what people believe. It challenges what their beliefs led to, because every idea, no matter how noble it sounds, has a direction. Every principle has consequences, and most people never follow them far enough to see where they end. When you ask what are the logical implications of your position, you force them to walk the road of their own logic, all the way to its destination. Example. Them. People should be free to do whatever they want as long as they are not hurting anyone. You. What are the logical implications of that idea? Who decides what counts as hurting? What about emotional pain? Future harm? Harm by neglect? Suddenly, what sounded simple becomes complex. Their tidy moral slogan starts to unravel. They realize their belief, when carried to its end, might lead to chaos, contradiction, or even hypocrisy. Socrates loved this question because it turns thought into truth. Anyone can hold a belief, but only those who dare to follow its consequences will discover whether that belief stands or self-destructs. The consequence calculator is the final mirror. It shows people not who they are but who they become. If they keep walking the path they claim to believe in, and sometimes that realization changes them more than any argument ever could. The Socratic legacy. He never built monuments. He never ruled armies. He never wrote a single book. Yet more than 2,000 years later, his questions still echo louder than any king's decree. Socrates was not feared because he had answers. He was feared because he had the courage to ask. He asked the questions that stripped away illusion, that forced people to see what they were afraid to face, that they didn't truly know. He stood in the streets of Athens, surrounded by merchants, soldiers, poets, and politicians, and dismantled their certainties, not with anger, but with curiosity. They called him dangerous. They accused him of corrupting the youth, because he taught them to think. And for that crime, they gave him poison instead of praise. But even as he lifted the cup of hemlock to his lips, Socrates smiled, because he had already won. His body would die, but his method would outlive empires. Today, in an age drowning in opinions, his wisdom is more needed than ever, because we live surrounded by noise, people talking, shouting, arguing, but very few thinking. The Socratic method is not about winning arguments. It is about freeing the mind. It is about having the courage to question not only the world, but yourself. So before you challenge others, ask yourself, how do I know what I know? What assumptions am I making? What evidence would change my mind? How would someone who disagrees with me see this? And what are the true consequences of my beliefs? If you dare to live by those questions, you'll never fear losing a debate, because you'll no longer need to win one. You'll have something far greater: clarity, the power to see things as they are, the freedom to think beyond the illusions of certainty. And that is the true legacy of Socrates. The final reflection. In a world full of noise, don't rush to speak. Learn to ask, because the one who questions rules the conversation, but the one who questions themselves rules their mind. If this awakens something in you, comment: I choose to think.